Adam, we got a game preview again, and we're now into the second half of the season. And I think I say it like every other week, but I'm like, I can't believe how fast the season goes. But we're already in the second half of the season. Game number 7 this week as the Colorado Buffaloes head down to Arizona for a 2 p.m. Mountain Time kickoff at Arizona Stadium. And that's a big one. They're all big, I guess, but it is a big one coming off the loss to K-State.
For both teams, Arizona is kind of reeling at this point. They're actually, you would say, in more desperation mode
Yeah.
than Colorado is at this point, having two conference losses now. And, they're dealing with some injuries, and Fafita's not the same player, at least production wise, this season so far as last year. And so I'll be honest, I was a little bit surprised when it came out with the point spread and Colorado was an underdog in this football game.
Yeah.
And since that point, I've been trying to research Arizona, and I've seen them play quite a bit this season. It just has worked out with our schedules covering Colorado to be able to watch Arizona a little bit more than some other teams in the conference. And man, this is in a conference full of parity, in a conference full of Jekyll and Hyde teams, this might be the most Jekyll and Hyde team in the entire conference. And
Yeah.
I just don't really see how Colorado is an underdog going out there. And I'll close out here on this point is that comparative scores can be kind of rabbit hole that you get down and doesn't really breed a ton in terms of like predictions and expectations. But you just look at it, Arizona played Kansas State not too long ago, a few weeks back, and got blown out. Colorado was up by 4 points against that same Kansas State team with 3 minutes left, and they weren't able to close out. And I understand that throwing a lot of caveats in here, but Colorado was at home, Arizona was on the road, but you do at least have to like look at that, right? The fact that Colorado played Kansas State much closer than Arizona did recently.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's one factor. I look at this Arizona team, and I agree with you. Like, I don't know how they're favored in this game. I mean, they've been a mess offensively. Um, you take out the 63 points I think they scored against New Mexico in the opener, where it looked like they were going to have this, super high powered offense, and I think they're about 19 points a game since then. And so they struggled to score, and they've even struggled to score against teams that we wouldn't say are great defensively, such as Texas Tech. Uh, you know, um, that was a game that they were playing really poorly in that game, and then somehow came back, took the lead, and then coughed it up, and just it wasn't a good game for them. And I do give them credit; they had a nice win at Utah. Now Cam Rising didn't play, but Utah's still tough to beat in Salt Lake City, and Arizona went up
Yeah,
there.
for
So,
sure.
you talk about Jekyll and Hyde. That's where it's like, well, which Arizona team is this? Is this the one that's going to put up 63 against New Mexico and go to Salt Lake City and win, or is it the one that gets blown out by K State and BYU and and coughs it up against Texas Tech? So, to me, I look at this team that it is a struggling team, and they're also banged up quite a bit on defense. So, I think it on paper it looks like this could be um, a good win for Colorado, and one that like their offense should be able to score some points, and maybe their defense can get well a little bit after what was a subpar effort last week against Kansas State.
Yeah, it's a good point you brought up their win over against Utah because this is a dangerous football team.
Yeah,
Like there is a possibility they get things clicking on all cylinders, and Noah Fafita looks like he did at times last year, which was some of the most efficient stuff we've seen from a quarterback, especially from
yeah,
a freshman, which he was last year. And he's been dealing with a little bit of a sophomore slump, but there's still glimpses of him, and that's kind
hmm
of why they're a Jekyll and Hyde team of him. He still can make some really good throws, and so you got to be on your game, and you've got to show up and frankly, have the mindset that Colorado had going into that UCF game because I think if UCF and Arizona played on a neutral field, maybe it'd be 5-5, 6-4 in Arizona's favor. But there's not a ton separating those teams,
right,
just from an overall talent standpoint. Especially you bring up the fact that they are decimated with injuries in some spots, particularly in the secondary. I was talking with Michael Lev, who covers the Wildcats, and he was saying they love to have seven defensive backs out there in certain packages, but they just don't have the depth to do that like they would want to do going up against Colorado in these primary 10 personnel looks that the Buffs have. So it's a game where if Colorado doesn't show up and play a good football game, they will lose.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
yeah, there's been a level of consistency with Colorado, still a little teetering here and there, but like since the second half of that Nebraska game, you've at least kind of gotten a feel for a little bit more what this Colorado team is, I feel like. And I think they have too, especially kind of coincides with LeJonte Wester's emergence. And there are guys that have gotten better from Colorado's team. And I just feel like they're trending in a better direction than Arizona is right now.
Yeah, there's also the factor that it seems like every time CU plays Arizona, there is a Wildcat that has a massive game. You know,
Yeah.
go back to who was the running back? Uh, you were covering them on the road when I wasn't, but there was a running back years ago, early Pac-12 days. The Buffs went down there and he just exploded for 300 yards or
Yes.
something like that.
Yes. Yeah. It was, oh, gosh, I'm blanking on his name. Um, Denver Post writer actually asked Greg Brown, who was the defensive coordinator, on the field after that game, do you expect to get fired on Monday? Because that's how brutal that was. I mean,
Yeah,
it was partying of the Red Seas. That's going to drive me nuts, Brian.
I'm
I'm going to
sorry
look
to
it
bring it,
up.
sorry to bring that
No,
up,
no.
but you remember that effort. I mean, that was down there in Tucson, right? And it was running back just exploded. We know Khalil Tate, the games that he had against Colorado, and he's actually the honorary captain this weekend. There was the other quarterback before Khalil Tate, the backup quarterback that came in
Yep.
and had the huge game. Fafita and McMillan obviously are dangerous, and so yeah, there's always Jonah Coleman had a big game last year against them as
Hmm.
well. So there always seems to be a Wildcat that plays well and has a big game against Colorado.
Kadeem Carey is the
There you go.
the
Yeah,
name that had eluded me. Yeah,
yeah,
it was like I said, the parting of the Red Sea. Like time after time, they ran the same play
yeah,
over and over, and that's why it led to that brutal question from a beat member. Beat member, it was just like, how do you even keep your job after what Kadeem Carey did the Buffaloes? They have definitely had some unsung heroes. Well, Kadeem Carey was a really good player, but some of those
yeah.
backup quarterbacks that have come in there. But and we'll see on Saturday.
Mhm.
There is talent on Arizona's team. Montana Lemonious Craig is still there in the receiving core,
Yeah,
but it has not clicked for them this season.
yeah, and it will be good to see Montana. One of my favorite buffs to talk to. Really, really good young man. But and obviously Tetro McMillan, just a fantastic receiver and maybe the best receiver in the country. If he's not, he's at least top five. He'll be one of the first off the board, as Coach Prime said this week on his coach's show. He'll be one of the first drafted. So, and there's always that chance that Fafita and McMillan just click, and all of a sudden
Mhm.
you know it's their show. And Travis Hunter will play from what we hear, but is he a little banged up, and does that come into be a factor in this game as well? So yeah, this is definitely a potentially dangerous Arizona team, but as I look at it on paper, I think Colorado has an opportunity to go down here and win a game.
How much do you think Travis Hunter is matched up with McMillan? Because one of the things we heard, Brian, in spring ball when Travis was playing nickelback was the thought of, okay, he can now shadow the other team's best receiver. And this is just my own thought here, but maybe because DJ McKinney and Preston Hodge were just so solid at the other corner spot and the nickel spot that you didn't really feel like you needed to have Travis shadow him. Now he's coming back from an injury, so you got to factor that in as well. I don't know what their strategy is going to be with that matchup, but I do feel like Preston Hodge is primed for a redemption game, don't you?
Yeah, I think so. He didn't have the greatest game the other day. To answer your question, I would not say I'd be a little surprised if Travis is chasing McMillan wherever he lines up. I think that Travis will be on the one side and you know maybe there's times that he jumps over there, but I would be surprised if it's every play, wouldn't you?
I think so, because I think they have faith in those other guys to get the
Yeah,
job done. But, there was a game way back in the day at Folsom Field against AJ Green, a game that Colorado beat Georgia in that was a really entertaining game. And Jaleel Brown was matching up against AJ Green early in the game and was just getting owned.
Yeah.
And Jaleel Brown went on to be, was it a third round pick by the Chiefs, played in the NFL for quite a while. So he's a really good player.
Yeah.
But they put Jimmy Smith on him and then kind of shuts it down. So maybe it's a play it by ear type thing, but have that plan B in your back pocket that if Tetero and McMillan is going off, because I do think if he's not the best receiver in college football, he's as good as any receiver in college football. He's got the
Yeah.
size, got all the tools, and he just makes guys miss. He's not easy to bring down. He really is kind of the total package at receiver. So if he starts to feast on you, then and Travis is feeling good out there, then I think that's the matchup we all want to see.
Yeah. Although, and I want to see it too, but I'm also excited to see McMillan against a DJ McKinney, because I think that could be a big test for McKinney, who, we think is an NFL type of corner as well. That he's played well, but I want to see him against McMillan as well. And so,
By the way, McKinney had some nice tackles
yeah,
last Saturday.
yeah,
Some plays that would have gone to be even bigger plays for Kansas State, but he's really proven to be a big help. I feel like in run support this season for Colorado.
yeah. And then obviously Colton Hood as well is doing a good job. So to your point, I think they trust their other corners to where I don't think that they will have Travis kind of chase McMillan wherever he's at. But you're right; it could be a situation that if McMillan is torching DJ McKinney early on, it's like, okay, Travis, you go where number 4 goes, and then and we'll handle the rest. So, but either way, I'm looking forward to the matchup. But they're going to be matched up, several times throughout the game, and it'll be kind of fun.
Everybody's eyes are going to be on those two when they
Yeah,
match up. Yeah.
yeah, it'll be fun. And the other one is, Arizona's got a pretty good corner as well. I know he's banged up. Takario Davis, Travis against him, or any of those bus receivers against him could be kind of fun to watch as well if he's healthy. I don't know if he's playing or not. He is one of the banged up guys for Arizona. So if he's not playing, if he's not playing, it sounds like the secondary is really where Arizona's banged up. And if they have a couple guys out, I hope CU can protect the quarterback, because if they can, it's going to be it could be a long night for the Arizona secondary.
Yep. It's going to be really nice down there, which I'm looking forward to. Looks like
Yeah,
a high of 75 on Saturday. And again, I was talking with Michael Levin, who was actually out in Boulder last
yeah,
weekend. Did you see him in the press box?
I
I didn't
did.
see
Yeah,
him.
I
Okay.
chatted. I
Okay.
chatted with him for a while in the press box last week.
Okay.
He was
But anyways,
he was doing like college tour with his kid, and
yeah,
happened to be in Boulder, and he's like, well, while I'm here, I might as well go to the game and scout Colorado a little bit. So it's good to
yeah,
talk to him.
definitely. But he was saying you guys lucked out because it's been miserable down there apparently recently. So
Yeah, I saw something about like a record number of days in a row this time of year, like over 100 or something like that. And but yeah, it's supposed to be 75, and I'll take it.
well, we're trying to get out to Tombstone though on Friday just to try to fit something in that's not
Yeah,
football related while we have a break. And it sounds like it's going to be 25-mile-an-hour winds down there in Tucson in the afternoon. That could get a little dicey.
yeah, that could get a little dicey, but hey,
I, I'm
that's
I'm I'm going to still go though for the tumbleweed B-roll that we can get for our analysis video.
as I say, that sounds old west like, so I'll take it.
Yeah,
I mean, hey, if you can if you can get tumbleweed B-roll, and look, there's only every other year. And it's one of my favorite things about Arizona, coming to the Big 12 with Colorado, is that every other year, well, won't be every other year, but we'll have these trips to Tucson, because I get to go down to Tombstone and get the Tombstone sarsaparilla, which is my favorite root beer.
it's pretty good. You gave me
Yeah.
a couple bottles of it, and I was drinking those while doing post game. This was, if you remember, 2 years ago, Brian. When Colorado went down to Arizona, that was the last game that Carl Durrell coached the Colorado
Yep.
Buffaloes. And yeah, I was a little stressed out throwing back those root beers that you
Yeah.
provided. Have you
I
ever
was
been to the Ostrich Ranch that's north of Tucson?
I have. So 7 years ago, I know this because my son is 17. When he was 10, I brought him with me on the trip. The bus played Arizona State, and so I brought all my kids on trips. So he came on that one, and we went down to Tucson and Tombstone and all that stuff, and made a weekend of it, and stopped at the Ostrich Ranch. So and he loved it. You've been there, I assume?
Oh yeah,
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 yeah. No, there. you just have to be, when you feed them, your hand has to be moving down at all times.
Yeah,
Otherwise, they get through that food and they start to think your hand is food as well.
yeah.
And so they're kind of intense birds, but they're pretty funny to look at.
It's a little violent. I remember it was like steel like cups we had or something like that to protect your
Okay.
hands. So
They
yeah,
probably had somebody's hand, like, you know, there was a trip to the ER, I feel like,
right,
that resulted in them changing their policy to not
right.
be able to feed them directly with your hand anymore.
Yeah, but it was fun. I don't know if I'd go back by myself, but it was fun to bring my son there and be there with a kid with all the animals there and things like
Yeah,
that. So,
yeah, yeah.
so yeah, well, I mean, we'll drive. I'm flying into Phoenix because I had, some my wife's going on a trip as well, so we put our flights at the same time. So I'll be driving from Phoenix to Tucson, so I'll drive right by the ranch. So maybe I will stop in and just say hi to the ostriches real quick.
Say hi to them before they turn into ravioli meat. Apparently, that's what one of the things that farm does, is sends them off to the ravioli factory.
Okay, all right.
I don't think
Uh,
I'd ever be tempted to try ostrich ravioli, but
Ostrich ravioli. No,
I'm
yeah, I don't
gonna
think
get
I would
some
do
good
that either.
Mexican food down there on Friday night, though. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. You got to get Mexican food while you're down there, and yeah, it'll be a fun trip. I've always thought that Tucson is one of the more underrated. It was one of the more underrated trips in the Pac-12, and so I've always liked going out of Tucson. So I'm looking forward to it.
I'll let you have that take. Yep.
All right. Well, you're from Arizona. You lived a lot in Arizona, so you have a different take than I do. But
There are very nice things about Tucson.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I enjoy Tucson. I've always liked going down there. So we'll see. Let's get to predictions real quick. What do you think?
Whew, well, again, I don't understand why Arizona is favored in this game, and
Yeah.
you've got to put in there that, yes, again, this is an Arizona team that if they show up and play well and you don't, they're going to win this football game. I expect Colorado to have a similar performance to what they had at UCF. It's going to look different. Obviously, Arizona is a differently constructed team, especially
Mhm.
offensively, than UCF was. But I see Colorado actually pulling away to a pretty decisive victory in this football game. I was joking with you that I was going to predict 49-2 just to see if that can get a rise out of some people. But no, in all serious, I think I'm going to go 45-20 in this one. But I do
Okay.
think Colorado has for certain guys like a Shiloh Sanders, a Preston Hodge, and guys coming back from injuries, kind of have this more as kind of a redemption type game for Colorado. But again, I've tuned into Arizona as much as I have had the time to so far this season, and there are stretches they look really good. But there's just too much inconsistency for that program right now, and there's still some inconsistency with Colorado's program. I'm not saying that, but I think that Colorado, especially with Arizona having a first year head coach, and there's some questions about
Mhm.
him being able to mesh well with Noah Fafita. I just don't. I don't like where that Arizona team is trending in this direction. And maybe Brent Brennan over time is the right coach, but that was a really tough situation they went through. I know that they had their hearts broken out, kind of like Mel Tucker did to Colorado fans back in 2019. Very similar.
Yeah.
You thought you had your long-term answer, and things were trending well. And Jed Fish actually did a whole lot more than Mel Tucker ever did at Colorado. So to see him go to what was a former conference foe, I mean, that was brutal for those guys. And so
Yeah.
part of me is kind of rooting for Brett Brennan to be able to figure out, because he stepped into a tough situation. But I think it's going to be uh, maybe a tough second half of the season for Arizona before we really see where that program's heading in the future.
Yeah. I'm with you on all that stuff. I think that Arizona is definitely dangerous. But I've seen them; they're inconsistent, and the stuff you see out of Arizona right now with the coverages, they got some injuries. The offense is a mess, and you've already got some of the fan base saying, "We need to move on from Brett Brennan. He's not the right guy." And so, if that's the case, Colorado better go down there and get a win. I think Colorado's in much better position right now, even coming off that loss where they didn't play their best football game against Kansas State. I think that was the type of loss that can really galvanize a team. And as Coach Prime called it, a wake up call. I expect the Buffs to play better this week. I think they're going to be able to run the ball much better than they did last week against K-State, because I don't think Arizona State stops to run like K-State did. And I think you're gonna be able to throw the ball. And I fully expect, I've said it this week, Shiloh Sanders is a better football player than he showed last week. He's a much better player. Preston Hodges is a better player than what he showed. Those guys will be better. That defense will be better. So give me the Buffs 35-24. I think they win this one going away, and get back on track and get that elusive fifth win, Adam. They haven't won more than 4 games in the season since 2019. Speaking of Mel Tucker, he was the last coach to win 5 games for the Buffs. So they need to get win number 5 before we can start talking about bowl
Yeah,
games.
yeah,
They need win 5 first, and I think they get it this week.
yeah. And last week we talked about that would have been a statement win,
Yeah.
but the loss is not devastating. You go down to Tucson, you lose. I don't know if devastating is the word because you still got 5 games left after that, but there is a lot of pressure, and that's something we were talking about after Saturday's game. Is not only didn't get the statement win, but now you got a little bit more of that pressure going back out on the road. But I think this team's mental makeup is so much better to equipped to handle that
Yeah.
pressure. I feel like,
Yeah, I think so. And I agree with you. This wouldn't be a statement win, but I think it would be a damaging, maybe not devastating. I think it'd be a damaging loss for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think if you're three, it's such a difference being 3-1 in the conference as opposed to 2-2. I think they need to be 3-1, especially they've got an opportunity here with Cincinnati coming up next week at home. You can win a couple in a row. You can get bowl eligible before you even get to November. So, but you got to take that first step, and this is it.
And how crazy is it that just our perception of Colorado, their schedule has changed so much. Now all of a sudden you're
Yeah,
going, no BYU, no Arizona State, no Iowa State. Preseason, yeah, Iowa State was respected pretty well, but those other teams were you wanted those teams on your schedule back
right.
if you were having a discussion on at Big 12 Media Day. So it's crazy. I expected this. I think you did too, just because of the parity in this conference that you were going to have surprising teams, but by no stretch did I think Oklahoma State would be this bad.
Right.
They're Colorado's final game, and that was one of those. If you're doing the win loss with your schedule, you're probably putting down as maybe a loss in the preseason, depending on how bullish you were on this Colorado team. Things have kind of flipped themselves on their head a little bit. Now all of a
Yeah.
sudden, Utah doesn't look all that intimidating
Hmm.
coming to Colorado. Same thing, you're going to have to play well to beat them, but it's crazy how much our perception of the conference has changed just in a few short weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I remember looking the preseason poll, the top 5 teams in the poll. Colorado had to play all 5 of them, and 3 of them were the last 3 weeks of the season. And I remember looking at the schedule like, man, you got Utah, Kansas, and Oklahoma State back to back to back to end the season. You better get that 6th win before you get to that stretch, which I think they will. But now that stretch is like, if you got 6 wins before then, you might be able to get 9, by the end of the
Yeah,
season.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, Utah, especially without Cam Rising, is not as formidable. Kansas is just dreadful right now, and who knows if they can get it back. And Oklahoma State, I, ex- Oklahoma State's got some time to turn it around between now and when the Buffs play them, but they don't look very good right now. And it's crazy. Preseason poll, AP Top 25. CU had 5 top 25 teams on their schedule. They may only play 1 this year, and that was last week against Kansas or Kansas State. So Arizona was in that top 25 poll, and then those other 3 teams we just talked about. So none of them are going to be ranked. And I guess Oklahoma State could be if they start rattling off some wins here, but
In
that's
Nebraska too,
crazy.
they're ranked right now, aren't they?
They are, but I mean, as far as like when, no, they're not ranked right now. I think coaches poll they
Okay,
are. I'm talking about
okay,
like when you played them.
got it.
Nebraska
Okay,
got ranked after beating Colorado, but um, you know, Kansas State might be the only top 25 team they play, which is crazy. It's setting up for Colorado. They're playing better than people thought. The conference is maybe a little bit weaker than we thought. It's setting up for Colorado to have a nice second half of the season.
yep. And this is one you got to find a way to win to get
Yeah.
that momentum going, and I think they will.
Yep, I do too. And Adam, will see you down there.
Can't wait. We'll see you.